Hello there, my name is Ridwan Whitehead. I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Oulu. My work focuses on collaborative learning and the challenges students face while working together. As part of my work, I use a lot of multimodal learning analytics methods and focus a lot with generative AI, both for research, teaching, and also my own personal learning. Some of my experience includes English language teaching, and also I do have some experience working in the edtech industry. Excited to be here. Hello everyone, and welcome to the module concerning ethical AI usage, specifically the topics regarding plagiarism and copyright issues. So, what will we learn in this module? In this module, we'll be focusing on AI and content creation. So what is ethical and what is not ethical? Understanding plagiarism in the era of AI. And finally, we'll be focusing on a case study. So about AI generated content in academia. So, AI and content creation. What's ethical? In this section, we'll be specifically learning about AI in content creation, ethical principles in AI-generated content, and the role of human oversight. So, let's look at these two examples. So we have Sarah here, who uses ChatGPT to outline ideas, then rewrites and adds her own research in her own words. And in this case, ChatGPT is used as a study partner, helping her to organize and brainstorm her thoughts. While Jake just copies and pastes AI-generated responses without reading or fact-checking the contents of it. And so when the teacher asks, like, "Oh, can you please explain like this part of your work?" he's not able to. So can you tell me which one is is a ethical use case, and which one is not an ethical use case of using AI generated content? So, if you responded that Sarah is the ethical one and Jake is not the ethical one, then you were correct. Why is this? Because we'll see in the future slides, but because essentially Sarah does not over rely on ChatGPT and does not use ChatGPT to kind of take shortcuts, but rather as a study partner. So, what do you think? Should schools embrace AI as a tool for learning, and should there be limits on how students use it for homework, or how do you think should it be, considering the fact that there are people who use ChatGPT in Sarah's way, and there are people who use ChatGPT in Jake's way? So you'll find that the answer to this question is not really clear cut, and that it requires a bit more thought and a bit of a more nuanced understanding of AI in education. So this is one clear example to give. So imagine you have a calculator in a math exam, and let's say the exam is about multiplication, right? So if you had a calculator during this exam, would it actually be something that would it be cheating? Would it be something that really helps you to learn, or if you're relying on the calculator, would it just make the point of the exam just non-existent? So the same goes for AI. So if you're trying to learn how to write an essay, but then you just use AI generated content to complete your assignments, then are you actually learning? So this is something to consider. I mean, if you're using ChatGPT to fill in content, let's say you're creating a website and you want to have some replacement content over there, well then you can use copy pasted AI content. But if you're actually trying to learn how to write an essay down to the details, then what is the point of actually using AI? So, what are some examples for AI generated content in education? So, how can we actually use AI? First of all, AI is really good at creating structured outlines and summarizing different articles. So, if you have a long piece of text and you want to ask questions to this text, then you can use AI for this. It's pretty good at it. If you want to gain automatic feedback for, let's say, you have your own writing and you want to understand, like, have I done actually a good job? Then, well, AI is pretty useful for that. Of course, it does not replace the teacher, but it can give you some good insights on what you should focus on. Another point is for content generation for lessons. So if you're an educator, then AI can help you create or at least draft like an initial draft of a lesson plan, or help you create quizzes or explanations. And finally, it can also help students with any questions they have. So let's say a student wants it's a possibility to ask endless questions about a topic. So if you have an inquisitive mind, you could use ChatGPT to, or any AI bot, to ask questions about a topic you do not really understand, and you can have it explain it in many different ways. But then, what makes AI use ethical in learning? So, first and foremost, AI should assist learning. It should not replace your critical thinking, because essentially, if you're creating something, you want it to represent you. You do not want it to represent the AI, right? So, in that sense, AI is a helper for you to achieve your own goals. Okay. Next, understanding over copying. So you should focus on understanding content, not just copying content. Because if the goal is to learn about a certain concept, then you should be using ChatGPT to help you to learn about this content rather than just having it generate some generic output for you, which you use and it does not really make sense to contribute to your own understanding of it. And next, transparency. So you should always be transparent in acknowledging the role of AI. So if a teacher asks you, like, hey, how did you do this? Or like, how did you complete your homework or your assignment? It should be the case that you explain, oh, I generated a draft using AI and then I added my own insights. So you should always acknowledge the role of AI, especially if guidelines are not too clear about how to use it. Honesty is always the best policy. And then ensuring that all students have equal access to a certain AI chat or AI bot is always quite important to ensure that fairness and equity is achieved. Otherwise, students who have access to these bots and those who can use these bots will be using them more and progressing more than those who do not have access. So that is one thing to consider as well. So, a key message is that AI should be used as a learning partner, not as a shortcut to completing your assignments. So how does it look like on a spectrum? So responsible use of AI and irresponsible or unethical use of AI. So a responsible user would use AI to brainstorm and outline ideas, while an unethical user of AI would be just copy pasting AI generated text without fact checking or without doing any changes or without adding their own kind of voice to the text. Another thing is rewriting AI content in your own words. So a responsible user would kind of make the text their own, because it is something that should represent your own ideas. But then if you just submit it as your own text without doing any changes, that would be an unethical use of AI. A responsible use would include fact checking. So AI can and does make mistakes in regards to the information it provides. So you should always double check the responses before actually using them. And an unethical use, an example for that would be to just use it to bypass learning and does not really contribute to your own learning. Another responsible AI use would be citing AI, or actually be transparent with AI. But an unethical use would be hiding the use of AI and claiming full authorship. I mean, that's just being dishonest with yourself, and it's harmful to your own learning. So, AI, in a sense, is a tool. It is not a replacement for personal effort and learning. To be able to learn effectively, we need to be able to put in some effort. So here are some practical guidelines for students. So for students, you should use AI for inspiration, not for answers. I mean, it can give you answers, but then again, the goal is for you to learn and not for you to copy paste answers from ChatGPT or similar bots. You should always cross-check AI information, because that is something that's essential to do. You do not want to have wrong facts delivered as true. And usually ChatGPT has these links when they're citing information that you can always go double check if it's actually correct or not. So you can double check the source. You should always be transparent with how you use AI. And you should always ask critical thinking questions like how and why, so regarding the content of the AI generated content. And then perhaps the most important is that you always follow school policies. Your institution or your school will have specific guidelines regarding how you should use AI, and you should always be following those. So we have an example here. So we have two short written responses. One is AI generated and one is from a student, so an authentic piece of text. So what I want you to do is I want you to read both and decide which response was generated by AI. So the one that was done by AI was response A, and the one that was done by a student, so authentic text, was response B. So, but how can you tell? That is a good question to ask. So, AI generated text often lacks personal voice. What this means is that it will give you a very generic way of writing, and there's no kind of argumentation or there's no personalization to the text. Another thing is that it will give you very generic details regarding a topic. So because it synthesizes what it finds online, it does not give you really specific details about a certain topic. So usually authentic text has more specific details compared to generative AI content. And finally, generative AI has a very specific way of writing, has a very specific structure, and those who read a lot of generative AI or who work with generative AI a lot, they can easily tell this structure from others, from like authentic ones. So this is one way to tell if a text has been written by generative AI or not. So here's a table that compares the key differences in AI-generated content and human-created content on several aspects. So in terms of creativity and personal voice, AI generates structured, neutral, and factual responses, but like I said, lacks this personal insight, while human-centered content is more personal and has a more unique storytelling style. In terms of critical thinking, AI does not really generate original thoughts or has a deep analysis, while human created content is more has more of an original viewpoint. In terms of engagement and tone, AI often sounds formal. It sounds very superficial and generic, and it's following a very certain pattern. But as humans, we're very creative. We like to adjust the tone of our text based on our emotions, on the context, on the argumentation, and this is also one way to tell the key difference. Another aspect is error handling and accuracy. So AI generated content can be misleading, it can be incorrect. However, when we're as human beings, if we're creating content, then we always want to validate. Of course, it's not always the case, but usually we validate our content and we cross-check sources. In terms of ethics and bias, AI inherently has some biases in its training data. So it often reflects these biases in the content it creates. While as human beings, although we do have our own biases as well, we have the ability to be more critical and we reason and evaluate the different sources in the content we create. So, all in all, AI can be a great assistant for brainstorming, organizing ideas, and improving understanding. But if you use it too much, or if you use it without giving it any thought, if you just copy paste, then this means you're over relying on it, which is something that's unethical. So understanding the difference between ethical use and unethical use is key to responsible AI use in education.